everybody. Thank you once again for joining us for the Theater and Musical Lovers unofficial of Dragon Con. Um, Unfortunately, it does look like we do not have Bill with us, but if you were with us last time, we'll just go around the horn again. My name is Gary Mitchell. I'm one of the madmen trying to organize us into a community and hopefully attract one day uh, at DragonCon. You can find me on the Twitter here, annoying people, and um, and you can find me on the American Sci-Fi Classics track at DragonCon when I'm not trying to do something like this. Joining me to my stage left.
Oh, was that me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Christy Chalmers. If you see me at Dragon Con, I am usually participating in some way in the Buffy horror musical. You can find me pretty much any social media at Salem Stitch, a witch in a stitch. And I apologize for the mess behind me. We're cleaning up holiday crap. So I guess this is him.
Yes. Up next is Mr. Greg.
Well, my name is Greg Bell, and I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and have been involved in the theater community in the Maryland and Virginia area for a lot longer than I'd like to admit, as I'm pushing 50. But currently, I front a theatrical troupe called Bloody Mayhem Theatrical, where we do all sorts of weird ass shit. From everything from stage productions, film stuff, and shadow casting. But I've been on the board of several theaters locally here in the Maryland area, and brought a handful of regional premieres to the area as a director as well as a performer. I guess we go down. Gary is down.
Yes, we'll go down to Ellery.
Hi. Hello. I'm Ellery. At the convention, you'll see me at the convention, that convention at DragonCon. You'll see me running around as part of the tech ops with the name badge Treble. Also at other conventions when I don't use my actual name. I currently work at a theater in DC as box office minion. And occasionally we'll be working behind the scenes for concerts and stuff in the DC metro area with the International Stagehand Union called IATSE, or performing on stage with the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, including their cabaret this year. I wear a lot of hats, as you can tell.
And then below me.
Hi. I'm Sarah Rose. You can find me on the internet, mainly on our group, which, if you didn't know, is DragonCon and Theater and Musical Lovers. Can't talk today, apparently. You can find me on Instagram, again, Theater and Musical Lovers, and yeah, that's who I am.
All right. And we are here to continue our discussion from our previous gathering about community theater and working in the not Broadway. Basically, why we love and should support and how we got involved with community theater. So please go back, watch that previous episode. You will see a lot of fun discussion. And we had a bunch of notes, and we were like, we're going to talk about these subjects, and we only got through half of them. So we're gathering today. So I am going to start with you, Sarah. Our next talking point we wanted to go to, and considering that we're currently on the YouTube, is a fitting point of, does community theater have to be in an actual theater to be considered theater? And in that case, I also mean like online, bookstores, coffee shops, out on a street.
No, in my opinion, Absolutely not. As somebody who has done theater, probably in more things that aren't a theater than are. It doesn't need to be in a theater. It doesn't even need to be on a stage. I mean, you can go out to a sidewalk and perform a skit. I mean, or uh, it start even doing a musical or something like that. I mean, theater is very broad term for me, and so absolutely not. You do not need to be in a theater.
All right, Ellery.
So as the famous saying goes, all the world is a stage. So I don't think it has to be in an actual theater, but it's also there's so many things I've performed in so many spaces that would not be considered a theater, but it is still a stage. It is still a place to perform. So it also depends on like what your definition of a theater is. And because even in historic times, some theaters were just a platform outside or a soapbox for someone to stand on. And I had theaters I performed in that were literally they built a stage inside of a warehouse in one case, and that was and like turned it into a professional community theater for a long time. But it was freezing cold year round. There was only one dressing room that everyone had to share, and you just dealt with it. That's what it was. And it was like this one hallway that was built with plasterboard. And that was all that was separating you from the audience when you were going from the dressing room to the stage. But I've also like you can perform pretty much anywhere. My one caveat to that is that you can perform anywhere as long as you either are covering whatever the copyright laws and stuff like that are for whatever you're performing, or are doing enough of a variety show that you're not going to get penalized for doing it. Because if you are doing it in an unusual space, the laws vary.
That is true. No one likes an illegal thespian.
Just don't get caught.
But we're all strange and unusual, so why can't we do it in an unusual place?
Oh, you can. It just can't be a like officially sanctioned show unless you're following a whole bunch of weird guidelines at that point. Or just don't get caught, like I said.
The not getting caught is an important part.
Yes.
Greg, what about you?
Well, I used to be a member of a company here that the pandemic unfortunately ran under called Gorilla Theater Front, and we threw shows up literally everywhere. We put Odd Couple up in a townhome in Baltimore. We did Hair in my backyard, complete with nude scene, and second act lit by firelight in a campfire. We did Lizzie the musical. I directed that in a warehouse basement that we stumbled upon accidentally. It was an old candy factory in a neighborhood called Hamden here, and they had converted it into this like cool studio space. And like we were a little drunk, I'll be honest. And we were walking down to get something we were doing a different event upstairs. We go downstairs and they were having like this crazy hip hop open mic with like t-shirt stuff. And we're like, hey, can we do a show here? And they're like, we don't give a shit. Yeah, pay. And we were like, okay. And so we've done stuff like that. We also threw stuff up on street corners in Baltimore, in protesting a variety of different things, doing things in that realm. I've done theater in so many weird places. I mean, a lot of them, like, and let's be fair too, a lot of like the actual theaters, when you're talking community theaters, they can also be in inventive places. Like, I mean, we have like we have a theater in Baltimore called Spotlighters that is literally the basement level of a giant high rise. They call it the atrium level. It's very nice. And but like there's these giant poles in the middle of the stage that's holding up the building. So every one of those poles is factored into your set when you direct there, because I've directed a handful of things there. And it's like it's you constantly like if you're sitting in one seat, don't try not to sit the tall guy there because nobody can see the rest of the stage. So, but no, I definitely think that theater is it should always be shared everywhere. So anywhere that makes sense. Like I just watched a show by the Baltimore Rock Opera Society. It was they threw up in an old bank because Baltimore said, we have an empty building. Do you want to do a show here? And they said, yes, please, because it was free. And so they went and they did their original Love and Roar. It was funny. It was about kaiju falling in love. It was hysterical. It was like 80s rock and roll. It was really great. But yeah,
I need to see that.
it's great. I think they've got it up on their page, so check them out. Bros, Baltimore Rock Opera Society. Those guys they only do original pieces. They don't do anything. They never have to worry about copyright because everybody writes it. So, but that's the jam. So everything is. I believe anything and everywhere can be what you want it to be. If you
I only mentioned the copyright because there's been a lot of places that went to go entirely virtual during the pandemic, and then discovered when they got a cease and desist letter or like a fine, went, oh, we have, but we had and it's like, no, you had it to do it on a stage, not to do it over the internet, which has led to a lot of people having to limit what they can do, go through extra hoops they didn't realize they had to, and pulling back on it now that they can do things in person because of the extra costs and the extra hoops.
Right. Yeah. Well, and of course the whole online aspect of everything. I mean that. Yeah.
Yeah, the online aspects is certainly something that can and probably should be a topic of its own.
Yes.
But Christy, how about you?
Well, I love the fact that I'm not the only one that calls it guerrilla theater.
Mm-hmm.
I was with a group here, Chattahoochee Shakespeare. We did Rocky Horror on the second floor of a restaurant. We did The Tempest in the backyard of a German restaurant. Restaurants loved us for some reason. Deanna, you're not wrong.
Actually, when we did the nude scenes, it was in the backyard of a house I rented from a church. So the pastor was there.
Oh, even better.
The actual pastor was there, and my wife was in it. So like, and I worked at the church. It was a bonding experience, we'll say.
That's one way to word it.
I don't know what kind of church you go to.
None of the ones I ever went to would have been cool with that.
I can tell you what my private Christian school would have thought of that.
Now, the UCC is down for anything. They don't care.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
At one point, I could only get hired by this very uber religious local community theater. And they called me in 2 weeks before opening to come in and play Truvy for Steel Magnolias. Yeah. So learning hair and learning the script at the same time. But they made me cut the line. He doesn't know whether to scratch his watch or wind his butt. True story.
I went to Catholic school for 6 years, and our Catholic school would compete with the public school across the street from us. So we did all sorts of things that everyone's like, wait, your Catholic school did what? My favorite one being, yes, we put on a fully staged version of Fiddler on the Roof. And they're like, wait, Catholic private school, Fiddler on the Roof. I'm like, yes. Do you know how hard it was to break us all out of the habit of like doing this whenever we were saying God and doing this instead? They like had to literally, the nuns were even like, this is not okay. The Jewish people don't do this. They do this.
If I were a rich goyim. Well, that's a nice way to
we're
derail.
not talking about Gwen Stefani.
Well, now that we've thoroughly derailed.
We're good at that. Theater people are good at that.
Yes. Yeah, but I also agree. It's like you can put anywhere you can get 3 people or even 2 people, a performer and an audience, you can do theater. One of my favorites was I had a friend who worked at a big name bookstore that had a coffee shop section. Oh, I'm going to say the name. They're out of business. Borders.
I worked for Borders.
Yeah. but they had a theater troupe come in and do like a murder mystery improv play, starting in the little coffee shop area that wandered through the store.
That's cool.
It was very cool.
I actually used to work the box office for a children's theater that when they first started, they used the lecture hall at a place local to us. It's actually a mental hospital. And so the kids were always in there, and I was always sitting outside, and you would randomly have patients like wander up, like, what's going on? And they're like, hey man, buy a ticket. And like, oh, I cannot, because I am here for other reasons. And but they were there for like 5 years, and that space was great for them. Now they moved off to a local college and stuff, so they're doing better. But like, it was just always fun because there were doctors like, hey man, let's get back to your room, let's go.
So I'm going to start with you, Greg, on our next point, because you've done this. What would you say to someone if they were wanting to do their own theater project or start their own community theater? How would someone go about putting something like that together?
Well, it is it's very litigious. It's more litigious than you want it to be, because you just want to do art, and that's what you want to do. But you have to, you have to file, with the government so that you can get your 501c, and you can do all those things. So your name is your name and no one else's name. They can't take it. But then you have to ask yourself, like, the biggest thing that you have to ask is, like, what kind of theater are you trying to do? I've been a part of some folks that they found a space, they refurbed a space, they used like local, friends and family to help get it up to code. That's a lot of heavy lifting. And that's a lot of money, because even if your buddies are all, licensed and bonded contractors and electricians and plumbers and everybody willing to donate their time, the parts are never free. So that's a lot of money. But I've seen people do that, and it's a labor of love, and they don't really make a lot coming back. But doing like we just said in the last question, where you throw it up where you can find it, that's always a great way to start it out, because there's always spaces looking to rent for a variety. They want money, so they're happy to give you a space to do the thing. I've been involved with so many local theater groups here in Baltimore in a variety of capacities, where they started bouncing from venue to venue, like this church basement here, the Polish Home Club there, this VFW randomly in my backyard, and then they find a space, like somebody like takes an interest in them. We have a local theater here called Still Point Theater Initiative, and they bounced for basically a decade from venue to venue, and then some guy who had like a giant building. It was an old adult daycare center that was huge and perfect for what they were trying to do. He said, here, just take the building. They paid $700 a month in rent. It was like the greatest gig on the planet for them. But it's perseverance. Like, that's the other side. So you have to take care of the litigious stuff so you can keep you, because you have to have that entity to pay for the rights, to set your account up with the different rights holders. You have to have money to do all of that. It's roughly like anywhere between $1,000 to $1,500 just to get that aspect done. Rights are never cheap. They're I wish that they were, but there's, depending on the show, like if it's a well-known show, it's super expensive. Like Rocky Horror is not cheap. Like, it's super expensive, but it's always a moneymaker. So that's a good way to bring some money back in. I am also going to say that wherever you set it up and however you set it up, get a liquor license, a floating liquor license, because the easiest way to make money for your local theater group is cheap booze and lots of it. We used to pull in, like when we were doing all this stuff, like randomly, we did hair for one weekend in my backyard, and we made $15,000 off the bar. Okay. Like,
oh yeah.
Now, granted, it turned into a bacchanal after hair was done, and everybody was sitting in the backyard, getting hammered and having a good time.
So it turned into
there comes the bonding again.
Right. But it was, we pulled in just shy of $15,000. Obviously, we could pay back the rights. We could take care of paying off whatever we had to pay off. And we were able to sock that money away for the next thing, which helped us pay for the lights and the sound and all of the other stuff that you have to do. Because it's I said last time, I'll say it, I always say it. Terry Pratchett said it in Carpe Jugulum, which is about the Phantom of the Opera. He says, opera is something that you put money into and you get art out of. Like, you never make money, you always make art. So it's a venture, but I definitely think it's worth it, because when you do start your own theater company, you can do whatever you want. Like, you can, like there's shows that I've had audition shows where I just feel like, hey, I want my friends to be in it. They're, like, that's always fun. You can pick and choose. Like, I don't always like the old book musicals. I'm a guy who likes the weird stuff, so I could find a weird thing and like pay the rights, which are cheaper usually, and throw that up somewhere. Like, it was always more fun when I've worked with other theaters. It was more constricting because they have their own mission statements. They have their own, I mean, not agenda, but they have their own path that they're trying to follow. When you started, it's your path, and that gives you a lot of creative, a lot of creative output. Like 2019 was probably the most creative year I had since I was like 20, because I was playing in a band and my theater was doing great and we were doing crazy shows, and I felt literally as good as I had ever felt being an artist, like bouncing between New York and all these other places. And then the pandemic, of course, made sure I knew my place and put me right back on my ass. So, but I can't recommend it enough. I mean, I think and I always think that Baltimore has a lot of small theater companies, but there's always opportunity. Like, that's the other side, is that when you're doing your thing, you can take a chance on somebody that may need this experience of the theater more than you need them to be on your stage. And that's a nice mitzvah you can give back to the community. So I love it. I love being in charge of my own destiny. I can't recommend it enough. Many other people would hate it. It's a question you have to ask yourself. I've rambled a very long time. I apologize.
Yeah, and you've also got to guess, you've got to be willing to put in that work, because now it's easy just to show up and leave, but when it's your company, then you're set up, shut down, all the hard decisions.
You're wearing about 20. I don't know anything about this. You're wearing about 20 different hats, and by the end of it, you're wanting to pull your hair out.
Well, and you
love it so much that you keep going back.
And in today's world too, you want to make sure that that you've got the right things in place. I mean, you want to have intimacy coordinators. You want to have people there to, like, when we did Lizzie deals with some really heavy stuff about abuse and things. If you've never heard Lizzie, I cannot recommend it enough. I love Lizzie the musical. It is such an amazing piece. It's straight up rock and roll, but it deals with a lot of heavy issues. So we had a social worker on standby, but the social worker is a guy I knew, was a friend of mine. And if he was like, yeah, they can call me whenever. Like, he had come in and met them and had talked with them, and it was a very rewarding experience. They actually, they confronted some of their own stuff. It was a really wonderful thing, and you have to have all of those aspects in place, because liability is also a thing too. So you want to make sure that you're taking care of your performers, that they're safe, that they if they feel valued, they will continue to come back. But that
I just say that's fracking awesome.
It's important. It's more important than it's more important now than it ever was before. I mean, good Lord, I broke my leg on stage, man. Whatever. I bloodied my nose, all sorts of nonsense. The theater was like, sign this paper so you won't sue us. Okay, that's fine. I'll go to the doctor on my own.
Oh, nowadays, they didn't even have a signed paper.
Yeah. Sorry. But nowadays, I couldn't in good conscience put them through that emotionally, because it's heavy. But it's so good. It's such a great piece. If you get a chance to hear it, it's on Spotify. That's how I found it. It blew my mind. Check it out. Sorry.
Oh. And if we didn't get this already, we're not talking about Lizzie McGuire.
Yes. It's about Lizzie Borden, who took an axe and gave her father 40 whacks.
Yeah. And we're talking about with the axe, not the other kind of.
Yes. And actually, the axe is.
Oh, I thought she gave a Brazilian.
There's the axe right there. That's the axe that Lizzie killed her parents with. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ellery from the tech side.
So I have gotten to be involved with theater projects and community theater, both that are either just starting or are still in their early years, or in a rebuild year, which is almost like starting all over anyway. They have a little bit of they have the advantage over brand new groups of they have some branding. They have some people who know them and stuff like that. But if they had a lot of really bad years and you kind of have to show your worth, it's not much of a leg up. And the things that you didn't state, because I agree with everything you said, but the only things that really weren't stated were like, as stupidly obvious as this sounds, you have to have some idea of where money's going to come from and assume you're going to need more than you think. Especially with the way the economy's been the last couple of years. You have to have about 3 backup plans ready to go before you even try to get yourself up off the ground. And you need to have a solid crew of people that you can like call on to wear about 20 different hats and both know the technical side of things and the acting, directing, all the different aspects. If you're doing a musical, someone who can be music director at the very least. And like, there is nothing wrong with starting with like canned music. There's nothing wrong with having your entire time as a theater company run off canned music, other than the fact that you have to make sure your actors are like 10 times more solid in their parts at that point, because you can't vamp if something goes wrong. You have nowhere to go. You have to keep going. And I've seen that go interesting. I've also been involved with that going interesting a few times. But you need to have a lot of people that are willing to do it for the passion and not so much the money or the name. Right. Like, you can't offer them much at the beginning. You can offer them, you can put this on your resume, which is better than nothing, but like, that's about it. And yeah. I also, whereas a lot of people try to look at, what shows can we do right away? My recommendations in the early years, once you know like what genre or what type of thing you want to do, look at doing themed reviews or like cabaret or something like that. Or like you do a couple of songs from each, but you're underneath whatever that number is that would require you to have to get a license for it. Or look at doing stuff that is in the public domain. Because it's not going to be the best it's not going to be like the greatest thing compared with doing a full show, but you can still do a full show like that. I've been in several shows like that sold very well, but that's what it was a review. It was a like, we're going to like haphazardly try and make a plot out of connecting all of these songs, basically almost doing our own version of a jukebox musical, but it's not one like. And I was thinking about that because of what your next talk's going to be about. Which the next spoiler, their next talk is going to be about jukebox musicals, but this was more of a like, we're going to like haphazardly make a script that connects all of these songs or whatever, even though they're not all from one particular artist or something. So it's kind of like pseudo jukebox musical, but not quite.
It's kind of like that one, Rock of Ages?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my second favorite show ever.
Oh, I have a hatred for Rock of Ages. I'm sorry.
Hey, there are people who love Rock of Ages. There are people who hate Rock of Ages. There are people who love Mamma Mia. And there are people who hate Mamma Mia. But that's it.
And everyone's allowed to have their own. And I always feel so bad because so many people love Rock of Ages. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I love the music in it. The plot makes me angry.
Everyone's allowed to be wrong.
Oh, yeah. My last recommendation would be, because a lot of the groups I've worked with are more family focused or like children focused. So you can't really do the liquor license thing, or it's harder to do it there. But we still did very well with making sure that we had, Deanna's correct. It's hard to get jukebox musicals right. And I 100% agree.
Deanna, make sure you come to our next panel.
Yes.
February 13th.
I may put her on our next panel.
Do it. But we were able to still make a lot of money by selling concessions.
Yeah.
And as silly as this sounds, it's not a requirement, but it is a strong recommendation, because I've seen the pros and cons of both not having this and having this. If you can find at least one person that's willing to work with you that has an OSHA 10 certification, which during the pandemic, a lot of stagehands were getting them because we had nothing else to do for a year and a half. It means that you have someone that can take you through the proper safety protocols and stuff like that, and also point things out you may not have even realized are a problem, so that you are less likely to have things become a liability. So just having someone that has that knowledge, because if you have an OSHA 10 certification, you have to tell someone if you see something that's a safety concern. It's literally part of us keeping our certification. It's not a requirement, but it's a strong recommendation, because I've seen a lot of things improve, because it's like we're trying to figure out the cheapest way to help you fix these problems so that you don't get sued.
And Christy, do you have anything you wanted to throw in there?
Well, I've never actually ran a theater, so I don't have much to say. I'll be honest. Sometimes I just get so locked up and listening to what you guys are saying that I'm learning this whole OSHA thing. I'm like, how do I get that?
Yeah, and I definitely personally I worked at a movie theater for 6 years, and I can tell you, concessions is where the money is.
Always.
I did my time. Yep.
You sell people a $5 bag of popcorn that costs you 25 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alcohol's great, but I've seen so many times where it's just not feasible.
Oh, I understand.
Concessions is a great second choice.
See, but like
popcorn and hot dogs, man. Popcorn and hot dogs.
I worked a lot of children's theater too, and you're 100% right. Like the easiest way to make money for the next show though is concessions.
Oh yeah, and like soda and water.
Yeah, because you can make I used to run the dinner theater, like a dinner theater, children's theater, and literally I would make so many hot dogs in one evening, and then they would just sit, and I'd send them out.
Deanna, whoever you are, I want to just give you the biggest hug right now, with consent, of course. Like that, people don't appreciate us, and it makes me really sad. So thank you.
Deanna is a very good friend of mine from Canada, and she went to a performing high school, I believe is what she told me, which is why I'm threatening to put her on some panels.
I'm gonna live forever.
Never.
Sorry.
Yeah,
but
tech people are not appreciated nearly enough, and
no, they're not.
For every 20 actors, there's one competent tech person. I will not say there's one competent tech person.
Yes.
Or someone that's willing to learn.
All right. So, and
Happy
one
birthday, Jessa.
Yes, that's my lovely Jessa. It's her birthday today. She turned 21. Yes. And a half. Yeah, well, I'll never forget the one time I went to a local Renaissance fair, and the sign for the concession said old-fashioned root beer, and I'm like, I love root beer. Let me go, and I buy it, and I can see the guy in the back pouring the root beer out of the Barks bottle, and I'm like, I just got ripped off.
Oh yeah.
If
you ever want to know if something from a Ren fair is a ripoff, let me know. I have worked for them many times, and I can tell you all the ripoffs.
Everything.
Lemonade. Don't buy it. Just in general,
that's a different panel for a different time.
Yes. But getting back to this panel,
non-track.
So we kind of covered this a little bit, the challenges of running a community theater. Is there anything else on that particular point? I think we covered that pretty well. In the get your certifications, get your tech, get your actors. Especially though, get your tech, and that is, I think, one of the biggest things as well, especially if you're running a community theater with no money, getting people you can rely on, because there's nothing like that. You're doing a show and then half your chorus goes, yeah, we got something else we're going to do that pays.
Yeah. No, that's valid. The other biggest thing I'll say too, one of the other that we didn't touch on, is staying relevant in today's world is it can be challenging, because there's a lot of people running a lot of theaters that are older, and they don't get the Insta, Snapchat, nonsensical internet stuff. And best advice I can say is, if you don't get it, acknowledge that and get somebody who does. Like
Mhm.
grab one, like get some teenage kid who that is a theater kid, and get them to run your social media better than some old guy trying to figure out how to share the
Yeah.
Facebook event. Because
Yeah.
that's how you go out of business nowadays, because nobody's looking at flyers.
PR, PR, PR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of, if
Don't
somebody can
don't
figure
ask
out,
me to do. No, sorry. Go ahead.
if someone can figure out how we can invite more people to the event page on Facebook.
Yeah,
Yes.
like our page.
Yes.
Metric.
Like, subscribe, share, especially if you're
Yeah, they
watching on the
wouldn't let you
YouTube.
invite anyone that
The
wasn't in
YouTube,
the group.
if you're watching on,
If you're watching
go to
on
the
what?
YouTube and like the video, subscribe to our
Yes.
page.
Yes.
I would say in the same vein of staying relevant, this is something a lot of people don't think about, is a lot of community theaters, at least that I've worked with, got their equipment either through rental, which is extremely expensive, even if you're getting a discount, or as hand-me-downs from like semi-professional theaters or something like that as a donation, which is better than nothing. But
make sure it works.
Sometimes
it's better than nothing, but it means that you're always going to be behind the curve of tech, and you don't need to have the latest greatest thing for tech to work. But you reach a point where your tech is not compatible, and in some cases is actually illegal.
Yeah.
There was a whole my example of that being about 5 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago, they changed which frequencies could legally be used in the US
Yeah.
Oh,
for
yeah.
microphones. And a lot of these companies that were like professional, semi-professional, all of that, had all of this equipment they suddenly had to basically throw out and get grants to get new ones. And they're like, well, we don't want to throw it out. So they donated it
Oh, jeez.
to community theaters or schools and stuff like that, because they're like, well, hopefully, like the I forget which industry it is, but basically, hopefully, like they won't be looking at them when they're looking at the people who are like outside of the legal frequencies.
Yeah.
Which meant that at that point, people were using equipment that was illegal, and on top of it, had a much, much, much higher rate of interference.
Yes.
And they didn't realize when they got this that those were the problems. They're getting this and like, oh, that's
geez.
great. We just got like $6,000 worth of microphones. This is wonderful. And then they can't figure out why they're getting such bad interference that their microphones are basically useless, or why they're suddenly getting these, again, cease and desist letters.
I was playing a production of Rent at some community theater back in like 2007, and we're in the middle. It was Joanne's song when she's on the phone, and there was a guy outside on his cell phone that bled into her microphone.
Oh my God.
Was talking about what happened with his mom at the hospital and how she was doing better. But they like, and it was like a solid 5 minutes where we were just like vamping on being, it's like, and we just kept because she was like, I don't like, so it was, it's a problem.
Yeah, it sounds silly, but it's because most people are like, oh, how often does it actually happen? It's like more often than you think, and it's happening more and more in this modern day because these tech companies need to basically force people to buy new equipment, because in these professional companies, not only do they know how to make things last, they also know how to fix these things. Whereas these community theaters are getting these things where it's like, okay, they've been fixed about 20 times, and then on top of it,
oh God.
So it's definitely something that you have to be conscious of if you are in a community theater or something like that and get free equipment or discount equipment, is you have to ask the question of, okay, what's wrong with them? It's not always, there's not always going to be something wrong with them. They might have just gotten new equipment and wanted to do something good, but you have to be aware of that. And you have to also realize that even if you get this, it's already had at least half of its lifespan used. So you have to think that this isn't the solution. This is it's extending your time until you need to buy stuff, but it's not fixing the problem.
Yeah, it's a new challenge.
Yeah, and I've seen it multiple times. I've dealt with it multiple times, and it's something a lot of community theaters are not aware of, and a lot of people dealing with community theater aren't aware of. Also,
Right.
if you're dealing with a space that's over a certain size or people that can't project, you're going to need microphones. Like, I love you all to death. Most people think they can project and can't actually project enough to be heard in the back of a room that's bigger than like 3 rows of people.
Oh,
It's not a
yeah.
bad thing. It's just it just is.
Yeah, I remember my high school, we had a huge auditorium, and the most common note we got from the teacher every time we were performing was louder.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and in today's
Project.
world of like more modern instruments playing music,
Yeah.
everything's amplified. Nobody's sitting back there playing a piccolo; they're playing an electric guitar, and you can turn them down.
Sorry, I'm a piccolo player. That makes that
No, but-
it makes me sad.
You know, but like when I directed Lizzie, like we had it in a basement, and the band was a rock band, and if we hadn't had the KS mics, we might as well not sold tickets because they never would have been heard.
Yeah.
And
I
you
just
got
know
to
that
factor
that's
that
something-
into your money too. Don't
Yeah,
forget that.
because I just know that's something that a lot of people like. They go, oh well, we'll just do it without mics and we'll have people project it. I'm like,
Doesn't quite work
No.
that way.
no.
You've
Yeah.
got we did Rocky Horror unmiked. No
Yeah.
one in the cast was mic'd. We had a full rock band. We got lucky in the fact that, well, we were all loud.
Mm-hmm.
And even probably last year, my partner and I watched the video of it because he wanted to see me as a baby me. And he was amazed by the fact that was all us. That
Yeah.
was no microphones. But to get something like that is so rare.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
also, you got to factor in the acoustics of just like the
Exactly.
room, like
And also not hurting yourself doing it.
Mhm.
right,
Which also
which
sounds
is
important.
another panel we should do.
Yeah,
Um,
'cause
How
if,
to act without hurting yourself.
yeah.
But yes, that
'Cause
is
if
one of the
people look
biggest
at
things
the-
that people don't realize in terms of it's not just staying relevant with whatever you're doing content wise, it's also making sure that your tech is staying relevant and that your tech crew is staying knowledgeable about any changes in tech,
Mhm.
because that is another thing that can shoot you in the foot is I have someone that knows tech. Oh, they only know analog boards and like how to work with like 6 my brain just shut off. They can only handle 6 inputs at a time and they don't know how to work with live bands at all. It's like it's better than nothing, but you're going to have a lot of problems and have to work around those limitations.
Yeah.
Indeed. So.
Sorry, I talked a lot.
Oh no, that's okay. It's just
That's what we do, right?
it's.
Big part of theater. Talking.
I want to perform, which sometimes means just running off at the mouth. So now that we've discussed a lot of how to get started, a lot of the challenges, a lot of the pitfalls, and I've got an easy answer for this one for myself, but I'll see what everyone else says. Who shouldn't get involved with community theater?
Shouldn't?
My answer is everybody.
Everybody who wants to, yeah.
And
You said who shouldn't.
No, I meant should. Sorry.
Who shouldn't get involved? Everybody.
Kind of the
No.
topic of the.
Yeah, no, everybody should get. I meant should get involved. Yes, everybody should get involved with community theater. And then, how do they do that?
With the internet, it's exponentially easier than it used to be. Like follow every, like in your local area, if you want to do it, just follow every single Facebook page for local theater stuff. Like in Baltimore, we have like 5 different like giant group pages, but then obviously all of the local theaters have their own pages. Follow anywhere that's ever interested you when you've watched a show. And everyone who wants to be involved in community theater should be. And even if you don't want to be involved in it, you should support it if you are interested in it. Like my mom always said that somebody has to play the radio, you know?
Yeah.
And like that's where, because those people are giving their all. And the way you can find where local shows are happening is literally just the internet is the best way. Like I'm old again, so when I started out, it was like newspapers and like you would
Flyers.
you would get like something in your mail, and I'd be
Mhm.
like, oh look, they're coming up
You
auditions
can
for the
afford,
entire summer for this one theater, like,
you
and
can afford postage stamps on a community theater. What?
well, those theaters were doing that. But you get on the mailing list as well. Get on any mailing list
Yeah.
in any way that you connect. So,
Mhm.
because people are going to push that stuff always.
Yeah. And again, I'm going to push go to your local bookstores or any place that has a bulletin board, because there are constantly going to be flyers up of
Coffee shop.
this show is coming. Yeah, coffee shops. This show is coming. This show is auditioning. But if there's a place that says, "Hey, we're putting on a show," go there, talk to the people.
And
Yeah.
just go to the shows, even if you're not involved. I love telling people I went to see a friend in the Diviners, which I knew nothing about, but I knew my friend was in it. They were talking before the show, said, "Hey, we're having auditions tomorrow night." I show up the next night, and got my first lead role, which was in Give My Regards to Broadway.
Yeah.
But I never would have known about that had I not gone to see my buddy's small role in this. I know it's a very famous play, but at the time I had never seen it or heard of it. So
My intro to community theater was, community theater outside of like school plays and stuff like that, or church plays. Like I said, I was raised Roman Catholic. I was very indoctrinated for a very long time. First introduction to like the community theater was looking for a summer camp that I wasn't going to be bored to tears at. And while I was at the summer camp, they pulled aside a couple of kids who were able to follow some of the directions without hand holding and stuff like that, and went, "So, do you think your parents would let you be involved with this children's show production that we desperately need cast for?"
Mhm.
And gave us, and they had already cast the show. They were literally like, just show up to rehearsal.
Yeah.
And started out just in the ensemble, got cast as the butt of the cow. And then
See
went-
part one.
yeah, see part one to see that story. And then they had the Golden Goose had family commitments come up at the last minute because of a family funeral. And they went, "We know that you can learn the music really quickly. Do you think you can learn it and be the understudy for the Golden Goose in like 2 days?" I went, "Yeah, sure." So started out as an ensemble and ended up with a named major role, and then understudy for another role. And I apologize for the noise. My roommate's dog is
Oh.
fighting a paper plate.
It's a valiant fight.
Yes. But I would also say there's so many opportunities to help out that you wouldn't even think of.
Yeah.
A lot of community theaters, they need just extra hands to help load in the show when it comes time for tech week, and to help load it out when it's done, to help, even if like, to help with things as simple as like, we need help hanging up the costumes. They're labeled, they're often labeled already. We just need help putting them on hangers or at the right stations.
Yeah.
We need help literally just sweeping the floor after the show. We need someone who's willing to sit at the concessions table or help sell tickets. Like, there's so many ways to help, even if you aren't comfortable being on stage or being the tech. We also always desperately need people who are willing to do like simple things like painting, like flats or set pieces and stuff like that, white, so that we can then paint whatever else on it. You don't need to have any artistic ability. You just need to be able to paint up and down.
And usually when you do those things, just so you're hip too, like when you chip in, you can usually see the show for free.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not
Like,
always, but usually, yeah.
Not always, but the community theater is going to be very appreciative, and they're going to say like, "Hey, you want to usher? Great, you can usher this night, and you can see the show that night." And they save seats aside for those exact moments. So
yeah, I've had one or two opportunities where, because I was helping with loadout or stuff like that, I did not get to see it from the audience, but I got to watch it on the monitor downstairs, which is still a nice way to get. It's still better than nothing.
Yeah.
And it's still getting to see it for free and experience it and support my friends.
Exactly.
But yeah, there's so many ways to be supportive, as well as if you do have the money, being in the audience.
Yeah.
Because nothing stinks more than performing to an empty audience.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Yeah.
The other thing I will say is how to get involved with community theater. Ask.
Yeah.
Go to a show. If you're like, hey, these people seem like really cool people, after the show, go up and ask somebody, hey,
Mhm.
how do I get involved with you guys? Because a lot of the time, they'll be more than happy to indoctrinate you
Yes.
into their group, because you are exactly what they need, which is
Right.
people and bodies and somebody who's actually interested.
And in terms of like, if you're new to an area, as someone who's had to move around for work many, many, many times, if there isn't a like Facebook group for your area, or you're not comfortable doing that right away, just doing a Google search for
Mhm.
live theater.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you just search theaters, it will give you movie theaters.
True.
But if you do live theaters, musical theater, performance venues, things like that, different other terms other than just theater, it'll give you all of the different venues that have shows going on in your area. And if you go to their website, you can see what's coming up. You can see if there's auditions. If you want to just go and check them out first, you can see like if there's a discount night or anything like that, or if there's a way for you to like usher for the night to get a ticket to go in, so that you can try and like see which group is the right fit for you if you aren't super comfortable just showing up right away.
Yeah.
As much as I'm an extrovert in certain systems, I'm very uncomfortable when I move to new places, and I like to like get the lay of the land a little bit before I'm like, hi, how are you? And it's a really good way to do that. As well as most major cities have
That's true
yeah.
too.
Most major cities will have a Facebook group where if you look up your city, and then most of them are like DC area. I'm in the DC area right now, which I'm thinking that DC area auditions and show information or something like that. There's groups that are almost identical to that in almost every major city. So that's another great source if you're in a major city. If you're in a smaller city, Google is your friend.
Yeah, and the other one I want to throw out there, because most theatrical groups and communities are fairly incestuous little circles.
It can be, yeah.
College. Find out
College
if
is a big
there
one.
are any college drama plays going on. You're going to see people there, and you're going to see the same people there, and those are the people to talk to.
For sure.
All right, so we are coming up on time. If anyone of our viewers has a question, please feel free to throw it in the comments. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up here.
Oh my God, you mean they actually finished in a
an hour? What? A panel is finished on
crazy.
time? It's practice. Practice
Yes.
for the real thing.
Yes. So starting with Christy, where can people, if they're interested in finding out more about you or working with you, hiring you, or just, talking to you, where can they find you?
Well, I kind of forgot to put my last name on again. But I am fairly active in the Facebook group. Last name is Chalmers. You can also find me TikTok, Insta. I'm not good enough. I'm not technologically literate enough to use like Snapchat or anything like that. But like I said earlier, you can just Salem Stitch, a witch in a stitch. And you can find me on pretty much any forum. I am in the Southwest Georgia area, Columbus. So if anybody in the area is looking for anybody to do anything, hi, I'm free.
Oh.
All right, Greg.
Well, I am in the Baltimore area, up in Maryland. currently, the next thing that I'm doing is I'm playing the bass actually for Little Shop of Horrors at Stevenson University.
Little shop
Uh,
Nice.
and then I'm following that up with a children's theater production of Jesus Christ Superstar, where I'm playing the bass as well. That my son is auditioning for. He's very excited.
I need to connect with you off of this so that I can get all this information. You're
Sure.
only like an hour away from me.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, and then the next big thing I'm doing is Bloody Mayhem Theatrical. We're actually going to be doing a shadow cast of Clue, the movie,
Ooh.
at the AFI Silver in Silver Spring, which is right near you, Ellery.
Oh, I know.
On
If you need minions.
I might. And that is on April 29th at 10 p.m. In Silver Spring, Maryland. We do Rocky there every year. We're the standing Rocky Horror Cast there. We've done Army of Darkness and Phantom of the Paradise. We've done all sorts of stuff there. And then the next thing I'm doing after that is I'm trying to figure out.
Wait, Greg, back up.
Sure.
How TF do you do a shadow cast to Army of Darkness?
Oh, it was exciting. So to make the army, I had 3 people that were actually people, and then I had them holding like the bars with the like actual like Spirit Halloween skeletons, and they were all moving like this. So the skeletons were all moving together, and then we had Ash, of course, doing stuff, and he was being cool, and we had a lot of like the cool masks and stuff like that. But like when we needed the blood to spurt up, we had like red streamers that we were throwing everywhere, and it was it was very inventive. It's the same like with De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise. We shadowcast that because he does all the weird stuff with his camera going and spinning. So I had like I was like, what can I do? So I was like, I'll have a bunch of minions on stage in various degrees of the 70s, and like when Winslow's playing his piano, like he's waddling in a circle, and there's 2 people just pushing the piano in a circle the whole time, but looking like they're dead inside because it was funnier that way.
Random question: are you guys the shadow cast of Rocky Horror Picture Show that usually does a pantsless run through the theater first?
No, that's the Norfolk cast. They're out of Norfolk, Virginia.
Of course.
Okay.
I know that because that's where my wife used to do Rocky Horror before we met. And we met at Rocky Horror. We met doing Rocky Horror in DuPont in DC at Halloween 20 years ago, last Halloween. That's when we met. So.
I had to ask because that was where I got to, and it was at a theater, which is why I'm going, wait a minute. I've seen it a few times. That was where I first got to see a shadow cast, and my partner at the time thought I was insane because she's like, you've never been to one of these before, and you're just going to drop your pants and run through the theater? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not?
Community.
Yeah. So that's the next thing I've got that I'm putting up on stage is Clue, the shadowcast there. And then I'm trying to figure out, like, I technically still have sort of the rights to Reefer Madness. I just got to find a place to put it up. So we haven't given the books back yet.
Why are you so far away?
Baltimore's a weird, kitschy town. I want to move to Atlanta, but then I love Baltimore so much because John Waters and weird shit.
Yep. And Ellery, where can people find you?
So if I am a bad millennial. The only internets that I am very active on is Facebook. You can find me on there as LELL Rhodes. You can also find me on there under Treble because that is my nickname on there. I'm actually going to be performing in DC at a cabaret bar called Crazy Aunt Helen's in about a week and a half. All right. With my chorus's Judy Cabaret. We're doing 2 performances that evening. So if you're in the DC area, stop by. I'm waiting to hear when the next performance of the Extra Gay Cabaret will be in February. And that is also at a bar in DC. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I have auditions next month for Something Rotten with Second Star Productions in Bowie. Yeah. And I'm hoping I'll get cast. We'll see what happens.
A musical.
Even if we don't, I'll probably get dragged in to help with something. But that's my fingers crossed is that I get to actually be involved with that, because that is one of my favorite musicals of all time, and they had to cancel it because of COVID, and now they're doing it again, and we're like, when are the auditions? So you can find me in the DC metro area most of the time. You can find me on Facebook, which is where I'll post lots of things. And starting this fall, I have no idea where I'll be because I'm currently applying to law schools. So we will see what happens.
All right.
Yay!
Good luck. And you can find myself and Sarah on the YouTube or our Facebook group. Please join the Facebook group. If I haven't mentioned it, we have a Facebook group, and it'd be really great if you joined it. Spread the word.
Wait, Gary, do we have a Facebook group?
We actually do, now that you mention it. I'm glad it came up. So we do have 2 questions here from the audience, so I'm going to throw to this one first.
If anybody isn't reading the screen, it's what's the one job not to volunteer for in the theater?
I don't know of any.
Cleaning the toilet.
I was gonna say I have a few opinions for that. This comes from my own personal experience. Do not volunteer to be the dumper of excess water when there is not a functional toilet on that floor, and the only toilet on that floor has been clogged with paint for several years.
Ooh.
Yeah, and this was a professional theater. I would also say, if you are of a shyer personality, maybe don't volunteer to be on the costuming crew, especially during the run, because especially if they ask if they need dressers. Because if you're a dresser, you're going to be dealing with all of the quick changes, probably doing the laundry afterwards, and dealing with a lot of very anxious, sweaty actors, which is not a bad thing. But if you don't realize that's what you're going into, it can be a shock.
And nudity.
Same thing if you're an A2. A2 is A2 translation, second audio person. So you're the person that has to deal with the upkeep of all of the mics, including putting mic condoms, and yes, this is a thing, this is not a dirty thing, on the mics before the show and taking them off afterwards when they are covered in sweat. These are not bad jobs, but these are jobs that if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, can be a miserable experience. Yeah.
I would say that one thing that I would always recommend is like be realistic with yourself. Yeah. Like if you're like if you don't volunteer for something, don't bite off more than you can chew, I guess is a good way to say it. Yeah. Like, I'm going to head up the volunteers, and it's like, oh wait, I don't even know what that means. And it's like, that's a bad thing. And also the toilets. Yes, don't clean the toilets. Theater toilets are the worst toilets. Indeed. There's a lot of people, and then actors are
gross people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, they're in a hurry. They got to hit what they can hit and then go.
Yep.
Exactly.
But those are the 2 things I would say.
Although we will always love you eternally if you are willing to, and this sounds like a stupid, simple thing, but it's extremely important, if you're willing to help sweep and mop the stages.
Yes.
Like, so important. Really, really easy to do. If you're ever in an area where I am, I can even teach you how to properly sweep a stage. Yes, there is a proper way to sweep a stage. But it is so important and so easily overlooked, and it means the world to everyone if you are able to help out with that.
Indeed. And then our other question, which I saved to be second, even though it came in first, because it leads into what's going on. What other panels do we have planned?
Dun, dun, dun!
Our next panel, we are intending to do at least one of these a month, depending on people's schedules. We might try to do more, but we're committing to at least one a month. Except for the month of September, there's a big event going on in September that is going to eat. Yeah, it's going to eat like everybody's time. So
and energy.
And sanity.
Yes.
Wait, we're supposed to have sanity going into
theater people are saying what?
They start that way.
I didn't say
I do not claim to be sane. Um,
But our very next panel is going to be on February 13th at 8 p.m. Jukebox musicals. I couldn't talk there for a second.
juice
I'm really
box
hoping
musicals.
some of the newer
Juice.
ones.
Now, okay. Now I need someone to write a juice box musical. It needs to be like all the Kids Bop songs.
All right.
Greg, that's
Right.
you.
Can
That's
we
your
work on that? Because I
assignment.
actually have some ideas.
I got 100
I'm down
kids.
for
so,
that.
yeah.
Okay, so we'll work on this and do it virtually. I got it.
There we go.
Oh,
All right.
and I still want to do a parody of Hamilton as if someone had written it in the 80s. You know, Alexander Hamilton, we're here to have some Alexander Hamil fun.
Oh, God.
You know, those bad edutainment plays they used to always
Yes.
do.
I still like to this day want to create a alternate version of Cats the musical that is based on, so T.S. Eliot, his books that the Cats is based on, is a mix
Right,
of poems
okay.
about cats and dogs.
Oh, we need
So when I
dogs.
found this out, I immediately went, I want to do the to rival Cats, I want to write Dogs the musical. Didn't make it that far, but read all of the poems,
Well-
and to this day I'm like, I want someone to do this.
So you're saying it was rough.
Yes, it was very rough.
Oh, that would hurt.
I will
Thank you.
perform in that. Oh, yes.
But yes, we are planning to talk about that. Is our next one. We are also planning to talk about tech. We're also open to suggestions. If you have a panel you would like us to talk about, please throw a suggestion into the Facebook group.
Or if you want to be on one of these panels,
Fill out the form. Thank you. Fill out the form. Message me. Message Gary. We want panelists. You don't need to have experience. You just have to have the passion.
And again, the biggest thing you can do to help us out is like, comment, subscribe, share. Get us.
Let's get us to
get us some
1,000 members by DragonCon. That is my goal. I'm setting it now. 1,000 members by DragonCon. So
we're
let's
already
do
at what,
it.
6
Yes.
something?
We're
600 and-
662 now.
Darn, we
Because
gotta
even
get
if
at
we
least
don't
to
get an
69.
official panel, I want this community.
Yes.
Or if we don't get a track, which we're working on it, but yes, a community alone is worth the effort for me. So speaking just for myself, Christy, Greg, Ellery, Sarah, thank you so much for coming. And everybody watching at home, thank you for watching. And with that, the theater is closed.